Jai Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. The battles in the air have become more technologically savvy. There is a total dependence of avionics today in this great battlefield of ours. We've got a huge enemy sitting in the eastern front, which is China, with a large air force as it projects to us each and every time. Even when it's actually just doing a fly past, or if it is trying to intrude over Taiwanese airspace, there is a subtle message there that the Chinese Air Force put out. To discuss this entire thing, as well as the capabilities of the PLAAF, I have with me Air Marshal PK Barbora, a Vice Chief of the Indian Air Force, who has immense knowledge and understanding of air power. My last discussion with him about air power and its capabilities was much appreciated by all of you. So I have him with me here again to understand the Chinese Air Force. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to have this chat with you.
Welcome.
So, when the Chinese Air Force actually projects, power image about their Air Force, they project a huge amount of numbers in terms of their fighters and their aircraft. Is it that they're subtly trying to project also focus more towards quantity over quality?
Okay, now let's start from the beginning, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When China got their independence in the 50s, early 50s, it was the communist regime which broke up China into two, you can say. One was old Formosa, now Taiwan, and the mainland China. And to hold their hands very strongly, because it was a communist power, was Russia. And Russia also wanted to propagate communism. And as far as they were concerned, the best bet was obviously China, their neighbor, as you can say, in Asia, Eurasia actually. And they were not very much concerned about, say, Cuba or something of that nature, which only gave them a kind of port to relax and, if wanted, as they did in the missile movements, they moved the missiles. They had to, of course, get them back after Kennedy threatened a war. So holding hands with Russia gave them a tremendous advantage, and Russia also, for the spread of communism and the sale of weapons. Every kind of weapon, whether it was land-based, sea-based, or in the air. Now, hence, from the very beginning, they're a big arsenal. Over the period of time, I'm going to cut this part short because it involves decades. The Russians gave them what they wanted, even some technology. And as far as the Air Force was concerned, they just gave them the old aircraft, vintage aircraft, the A7s, etc., which were the MiG-19, MiG-17 class of aircraft. They gave them some bombers, definitely. And but in numbers, they gave them quite a bit because it was a junkyard. But the Chinese were very smart. They became very good at reverse engineering. Very, very good. So over the years, when they bought equipment from Russia, I myself had warned my friends in Russia when I was there in Moscow for 3 years that Chinese will reverse engineer whatever you give them, except maybe for the engine, which was it's a tricky thing to make engines. They have been able to do the rest. Now, how did China achieve this technological advance in terms of brains in the country? We may not have realized, because we in India and most of the countries, we have a 4-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 7 years plan. Chinese have a 50-year plan. What they did is actually they exported and re-imported their people. They sent their bright students all over the world, mostly, of course, to the Western world and Europe, to become nationals of that country, do their education, full education there, join sensitive companies dealing in arms, weapons, safe, your space, etc., etc., etc. And on the pretext of going back to the home to look up their old parents, etc., they would come back and share the knowledge. This was a beautifully planned game. Like, even if you look at India, what percentage of Indians are there in NASA? A phenomenal percentage. But our people are not coming back, or we do not have that devious mind of getting them back to India to steal. But China had no inhibitions about stealing. Let us be very, very honest. I remember at one time, the Israelis gave them a Kafir aircraft. I told the Israelis, I said, don't give it to them, they will reverse engineer it. Sure enough, Israelis didn't believe me, of course, because who the hell is this Ekam defense attaché of India in Moscow? But they reverse engineered it. Finally, Russia realized that, hey, China is overtaking us. Now, that is when I have seen this photocopy of an order, which was shown to me by my friends in Russia, where he says, give anything that China wants or sell to them, anything they want to buy, but don't give them technology, critical technologies, which he said, give it to India. Frankly, it was there written by Putin. Anyhow, this is how they built up their captive brains to be able to get knowledge, bring it to their country, reverse engineer, and they became very good at it. So anything that you see, especially in the Air Force point of view, barring the old goods that they have those bombers, which they call them strategic bombers, after all, is not very complicated really to nuclearize any weapon. Not very difficult. We have also partly done it. You know it as much as I know it. But the platforms were there. They got them, kept them going, and the old fighter fleet they sold to Pakistan and some of the Vietnam, Cambodia, this thing, that thing, and they got rid of them slowly, but by making some money, and then started re-engineering the modern fleet. All the Sukhoi varieties, they have done it. All. Because Sukhois took a leap ahead of the MiG varieties over a period of time, and they obviously switched that side. Then stealth technology. Now, I was also shown stealth technology by the Russians. Not a great thing, frankly, made the aircraft heavier, cumbersome, little cumbersome to handle. But the Russians could, get the Chinese to buy it. And Russians, since mid-80s onwards, 90s more so, they were in financial grief after the breakup. And because of this financial grief, Chinese took full advantage of this and started literally buying anything that they wanted. Not realizing, the Russians not realizing that they have become masters at reverse engineering. We also did it, by the way. A Kiran aircraft came out from a reverse engineering of the aircraft which they photographed and took everything in the Jet Pro in Palam. Well, that is how they decided to go about it. Since they could not design their own. Everything, if you look at the air aspect, everything is almost a carbon copy of what the Russians have mostly. So they look, as far as the CCCP is concerned, or Communist People's Party, CPP, they had some good leaders, excellent leaders who thought of China, like I said, 50 years ahead. Mao Zedong, Yang Zemin, now Xi Jinping, all these fellows thought a lot ahead. Their intention is what? I think it's written in the Bible or somewhere. The yellow race will rule, finally. They're very clear of what is their aim. We are not very clear. We fight with each other on a daily basis, including landing at that Purvanchal bloody highway, which I had to tell them don't become political in this issue at least. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I just put you into pictures to how they managed to get their own people's brains back to their own country on the pretext of visiting motherland, this thing, that thing, and the Americans were fools, and they said China is our friend and Russia is our enemy. Those days, Cold War. And Chinese did it, and they learned the art of reverse engineering. So they progressed rapidly because they spent money. And I'm not going to talk about what came out in the media a few days back, is to say that they're the richest country in the world, $120 trillion. America's $90 trillion. Well, they can keep saying, but we don't know what is true and what is not true.
Absolutely.
Frankly, we don't know, because if iron curtains were something in Russia, these fellows have got an iron, lead, and every other metal you can talk, which you just cannot see through. How they're getting it, what they're doing, of course, their thinking was to try and dominate firstly Asia, then move into Africa, small nations in Africa who were, means, if Africa has been looted by the West and Europe, looted. Finally, I think about a few years back, America has put an Africa command to check the Chinese. But it maybe was a bit late. The Chinese had already moved their tentacles everywhere. They got money, bribed people to get their own money back. They got more money. They actually bought off parts of countries, like it's happened in, I think, Tajikistan. They bought off corridors here. They bought off from China, from Pakistan, Myanmar, all these places they bought. They've not bought off from India, but they are forcibly, I'm telling you, forcibly occupying our territory. Fault is ours. Don't blame them. It is falling into their plan, their mapping. It is not mapping what I show them. They get to hoots. It is their mapping, and their map is more original than the other maps as far as they are concerned. And they'll stick by it. They'll stick by it. So India is also there in that so-called plan of theirs. Maybe the portions that they are nibbling into is not of any significant importance to India's strategy or the strategic thinking. But they're doing it. And unfortunately, our history says as to how we surrendered from time to time to time to the Chinese, thinking we will buy the goodwill of China, which we couldn't buy. They are very clear. They're very, very, very clear in their thought process. And it is not a government or a political party. It's been all of us to blame. All. Okay, right from Pandit Nehru, going down to Bajpayee, and even today, we agreed on a Tibet autonomous region here. Bajpayee. History told us that Tibet was part under control of even the Maharaja of Kashmir.
Yes.
Mongolia, gone. Inner Mongolia is gone. They tried with Vietnam. Unfortunately, they couldn't go very far. But what I'm trying to play is the jigsaw puzzle that it is formulated for itself and fitting in all the pieces is not a 5-year plan. It's a 50-year plan. So they have a very, very robust Air Force today, number-wise and type-wise, role-wise. I won't name all of them. It starts from the Su-27 onwards, which the high-performance aircraft came in. Otherwise, they had A7, the MiG-19, MiG-17 series with nothing, or MiG-21 series, nothing very much to talk of. And they have moved into the higher grade. Again, the MiG-27, they were the Su-27s actually. There are 2 factories in Russia actually. Okay. One in Komsomolsk-on-Amur, that is in eastern Russia, and one is right next to Moscow area, where the Sukhoi project team, etc., and the Sukhoi design bureaus, etc., there. So Komsomolsk-on-Amur, which I visited also, I was the first Indian to visit it, and they showed me, everything from there goes to China. And the rest for us people, like we have got the Sukhoi, etc., it came from Moscow. The so-called Irkutsk factory. Irkutsk is on the east coast of Lake Baikal. So this is how even the Russians planned it. That Komsomolsk-on-Amur is in a God-forsaken place. Who will bloody... But from there they started. Similarly with helicopters. We used to get it from Kazan, but they got it from Ulan-Uday. Same Mi-17 and Mi-21. It's ridiculous how the Russians and the Chinese went about it. Anyhow, so as of now, they have a plethora of aircraft. On a daily basis, they're producing one thing new. But as you very rightly said, we do not know what are the technological advantages that they have garnered from either stealing or designing on them. Okay, so we have no clue. Neither does the Americans have any clue. But I remember about 10 years back or so, a Chinese fighter and American spy plane, you can call it, had a midair in the east coast of China.
Yes.
And that American aircraft had to make an emergency landing. Within hours, the Russians were on the way by air. I know it because I was told to now quickly look into the American aircraft in every respect, photograph, whatever they wanted to do. And they came back very happy. Now, this is how, again, technology is stolen. And it is shared. Because China had the money to buy. And they bought. They bought from the Russians the maximum. And other countries, by devious means, they managed to get a lot of technology. So as far as numbers go, China is way ahead. We can never match up with them. Maybe soon they'll be ahead of the Russians. Maybe not all technology, number-wise. Because I remember when flying over a certain base in Russia and looking down at the airfield where we were going to land, I thought, what a beautiful bloody fencing they have made, a wall or a fencing. But after landing, I found wingtip to wingtip, MiG-23s, MiG-27s, Sukhois had actually put around the boundary of this whole airfield. Because they don't have the money to buy the fuel, although fuel is abundant in Russia, but to take it out and they didn't have. So a stage is coming where the Russians are sticking to some of the rather critical brands of aircraft which they feel is still required against the NATO and whatever it might be, the Chinese are just building up numbers now. Technology, I have no clue. Let us be very honest. No clue. But even if you see 10 aircraft are flying or 156 aircraft flown into Taiwan over a week's time, it scares you.
It's an impact, yes.
That means they're serviceable aircraft at least. They were flying in the air and they're coming back. And of course, they are turning back at a certain point of time. And I don't think the Taiwanese have the guts, or the Quad have the guts, or the Americans have the guts to fire at those aircraft.
Sure. Yeah.
Because no one wants a World War scenario. No one wants it, because everyone. At the same time, if you notice that the missile silos in central China or Tibet, they're going to go into thousands.
Yes, sir.
No one knows how many missiles do they really have. Anyhow, so that is how they went about in the last 6-7 decades, how they prepared themselves, and what is the thinking process, and where they caught on to the weak links of other nations and actually became richer. Not that the BRI is very successful at the moment, let us be very clear and honest, but they have taken possession of land of other countries by whatever means was possible to take land. And in Tajikistan, it's good land property. They've got maybe just about 100 square kilometers, but a very important landmass. Similarly, China, Pakistan, you know what is happening on the CPAC. I don't have to tell you. Now they're going to try and make inroads into Afghanistan for again the mineral wealth. So they're generating money from somewhere. So without money, I'm sorry, you can't do it. Like if you go to some of the big cities of Shanghai, etc., my God, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable. One of our political leaders said, if I had the chance, I would have come and settled down in China. That's the kind of a... But what is hidden behind the walls, no one knows.
Only speculation.
We've only come to know post-pandemic a few of the very weak areas. Few of the weak areas, we know it, and the sanctions that have been applied, or their self-sanctions that they have applied to themselves, like the coal from Australia, etc., is putting them in grief. But yet, they are the richest country, as some people say. I didn't cover a lot on the weapon systems, but again, we don't know.
Correct.
If they claim that the missile goes 150 kilometers, you got to either take it with a pinch of salt or accept maybe it comes.
That's true.
Their EW equipment, we've got no clue. Yes, some of it, EW is something you can't just steal and, quickly. It's hardware you can do a lot, but Chinese are also good at software now. So this is it. That as of this moment, they are a force to reckon with on the East Coast. Definitely. South China Sea, Japan, Korea, and of course Taiwan. A force to reckon with.
Sir.
And we come to the India equation a little later when you progress.
So when the Chinese have stolen most of the Russian technologies, also they have been able to actually nip their, pens into the American technology. At the face value of the aircraft, they look very similar to the American, their new J-20 looks very similar to, in the front part of it, to an F-22, and at the rear part of it to an F-35. And that's something without looking at the avionics.
That look like, so does the Russian aircraft equivalents also look alike. Because the technology at this moment is to this level.
Yes.
So best is copy.
Sure. My question to you, sir, you mentioned about the pandemic, and I personally feel the pandemic is going to be a point in time where the Chinese are going to be shown the mirror. It's happening slow and steady. It's not happening at the speed that a lot of us may like it, but slow and steady, that mirror is being shown. And a lot of countries, especially America, has actually cut off a lot of the supply to the Chinese where they were trying to steal technology. They've removed a lot of people. Slow. It's a time-taking process, and I'm sure it will happen. Once this thing is at least 25-30% done, where do the Chinese actually get their technology? Would they be able to carry their R&D further to develop on what they stole already?
Let's be very clear about one thing. There's this phrase, hook by hook or by crook. They will do it.
Okay.
They will do it. Today, we are all suffering in the world because of semiconductors, chips. Taiwan produces about 60% plus of the world's semiconductors. I can assure you one thing, another 5 years from now, China will beat Taiwan. I promise you that. It'll beat America, who's also obviously going into trying to see how quickly they can produce this, because it's impacting the whole world in every sphere. It is not only defense, it's on every sphere.
Sure.
It's impacting. And this pandemic has definitely slowed down things for China. It is not that it had its impact. Forget about the story of where it started, the virus, etc. It makes no damn difference. Chinese will means. Did you know? I'm sure you did because you're a well-bred fellow. That in WHO, who was one of the directors? Xi Jinping's wife. Okay. They have pumped in the maximum money to WHO. Fauci and all these fellows can keep talking that, oh, well, we haven't done anything wrong and this and that. All bullshit. The Americans, after the military exercise with the Chinese in Wuhan area, quickly evacuated that place, inclusive some of their personnel from the consulate, and came back. So, come on, let's put 2 and 2. We are not Gadhas, we are also Kalus. We are good Kalus also. And we Kalus are also smart. But no one wants to admit it.
Yes.
The problem is no one wants to admit to these things. So, how are they going to manage this post-pandemic? Now, I am quite sure that they will try everything to see how they can resupply, start the trade again with Australia as far as coal is concerned. They will try and find some way, because it's impacting on them. And the winter is also approaching. It's not a joke in China, and some of the far-flung areas is not a joke. They care 2 hoots for the Uyghur people from Eastern Tibet, Western Tibet. They care 2 hoots. You must have seen a whole pile of those videos, which I have also seen, how they treat them. They are not bothered about them, even if Pakistan won't say a word about it, because Pakistan says, Mera pet mein khana chahiye, screw the Uyghurs. Now, you see, even if you do reverse engineering over a process of time, you gain some knowledge, isn't it?
Sure.
They have gained knowledge like this also. Maybe they haven't got to the full knowledge, but they will, at some point of time, they will become lesser dependent on the West, like United States. Now, let's be honest. The United States economy, to a large percentage, is dependent on the Chinese economy.
Yes.
Yes, no. If that be so, America can't go down putting barriers here, there, where they will. Because the Chinese can also do the same thing to them in some form or the other. And the Americans know it. Otherwise, you think a person like the President of the United States, what do they call him? Focus or something of that nature? You think he would agree to a 3-hour-long virtual conference?
Which is initiated by him, sir.
Yeah. Now, come on. Let's read between the line and not listen to the
Rhetoric.
Secretary of State and all these fellows talking. Come on, yeah. There is something hidden there. We know it that China can blackmail them very easily, literally. But Chinese also know it will have a very bad
Impact.
adverse effect in the progress that they are showing in certain fields. Hence, they're not pushing for it.
That will be the red line, sir.
Yeah, that will be the red line. So there are these complications which Germany never took any action on China. Why all this time? Again, yeah,
The
money
car
is
industry will
invested,
fall, sir.
and it's a means I am, believe me, Adi, I am just metric pass. I'm being honest. I'm not even JCC qualified. I'm not staff college qualified. I'm not NBC qualified. But I feel I have some brains. Ultimately, I became who I became. Commanded two commands and vice chief. I presume someone saw something in me,
Yeah, obviously, sir.
and I have put these things together. But there are some people who will not accept it, who will not just accept to see it with a different pair of glasses rather than what they put on a day-to-day basis.
True.
So we are going to see a little bit of a turmoil, sure, post-pandemic, where pandemic hasn't ended by any chance.
Absolutely.
Europe is going through shit at the moment. The United States is already in shit.
Russia, Europe, United States, entire thing, sir.
Sorry?
Russia, Europe, United States, the entire sector.
Yeah. So it will take the Chinese some time to catch up on certain issues like I'm saying semiconductors or something, chips,
Sure.
etc.,
Mm.
and on technologies which can be barred from them without them losing out technically very much. Economically, it will have impact on them. But how they manage the economy, how many people they allow them to die, God only knows. Now, I'll remind you of a video post the Wuhan virus spread. The Chinese had built a huge, massive hospital to cater to 10,000 plus people.
19 days, sir.
No, whatever, 10 days, 9 days. And someone had actually quoted behind that hospital was a huge furnace where they actually burnt the dead.
They ordered more than 2,000 urns in the first month itself.
So they have no rules to follow.
Zero respect, yes, sir.
Want it, we shall have it. Period. They've sacked generals after generals, politicians after politicians. They just go missing here. No one can question them. As far as they're concerned, Taiwan is an internal issue of their country. That's how they put it. They said, don't interfere in our internal issues.
Correct, sir.
We are not interfering with your internal issue in the United States or Germany, but we're nibbling at you at our own time. Okay, so that is what I feel is the post-pandemic scenario.
Sir.
They may turn out to be lucky or they're in shit. Because if they cannot master certain things, their economy just cannot carry on growing. It's not possible.
True.
Not possible.
With the man in helm right now bending on to destroying things within his country, well, it's going to be another story altogether, sir. That's true, sir. You mentioned India and China. Of course, a lot of people that are going to be listening to this would be eager to, realize one thing, because we also, the last time you and I had a conversation, the China issue was not that hot, but today there's sparks flying. There've been intrusions again. There are, a sort of a weapons race which is actually taking place, although India is far behind in this entire segment.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
there is some sort of a movement in that aspect, and diplomatically as well, we see India now standing up and kind of firing back, which wasn't the case. There was a bit of a silence sort of a treatment before. Having said that, sir, on the ground, I think people would be eager to realize the difference in capabilities and the strengths of the Chinese Air Force versus the Indian Air Force in a battle sort of a scenario. We all realize that long drawn battles are not possible, but even in that short, intense conflict, do you think that the Chinese have it in them to kind of hold their ground?
Let me put it this way. There is a lot of international pressure on both the Chinese and us.
Yes, sir.
Lot of international pressure. So much so that America has actually opened the gates to us. You take anything you want to. They have not yet formally uh, sanctioned India as far as the S-400 is concerned.
S-400. Absolutely, yes, sir.
Yeah, but I'm not a fan of the S-400, having seen it myself there. But, well, America didn't want it, that it should go to an ally of America. Okay, we may not be his favorite ally, but still. But at the same time, um, I personally feel that we are getting what, fortunately, we have been wanting for a long, long time. We're getting it rather fast. And the beauty is also there are startups, the industry, both the private sector and the public sector. The public sector have been given a kick,
Correct.
which they deserve to have been given long time back. And the private sector have been given the opening. Like of the drones, Kahani, as to how we have gone about. You've known of the long-range artilleries. I wouldn't say very much about the Tejas, but the Tejas is Tejas. But the light combat helicopter is a light combat helicopter, which I was very impressed with the flying show that they did for the inauguration.
Yes, sir.
I was there to see it. And but we have got our long deficiencies as what? Main critical engines, aircraft engines, tank engines. Can you believe it? We still can't manufacture it. The Kaveri engine is a good engine to give you hot gas. Winters ke liye bahut acha hai. I've been to that bloody plant on their invitation. I've gone and seen it. I said, yeah, no, it is very difficult to make.
True.
But this mid-level technology, we missed out. We were not given mid-level technology by the West.
We were kept away from
Ambassador car, we went to a spacecraft. Okay, but mid-level we have missed. Now we are catching up. Now we are catching up on a different, because the technology of technology has also changed. And hence we are being able to cope up to a large extent today. So we are getting equipment. We are, like you said, it's a mini arms race at the moment. It's arms races only from our side because they are just putting in whatever they have elsewhere. And but the pressures being so much, unlikely air power will come into play. Unlikely.
Escalate too much.
They will have that tutu meme and nichu nachao on a boxing field or something. It's my gut feeling. And I've been saying this for many years also. After all, I'm also maybe got some Chinese blood in me, belonging to the Northeast. Okay. And I personally feel unlikely at this moment because, say, in the naval front, they made 3 aircraft carriers. Very good. The first one actually they bought from Ukraine, refitted it, and did it. The second and third they're making. I'm aware of these things. That's why I'm telling you. But what is again inside the thing, I'll never know. So if you do an aircraft carrier with all the beautiful coverings and the sides, etc., with the radars rotating and all the weapon system they can fit there, I don't know the capabilities. And it will be very, very difficult to find out the capabilities. And just imagine whoever might do it does it, that one of their aircraft carriers is shot up by any means. Can you imagine the loss of face? Or if the HMS Queen Elizabeth were to sink, can you imagine the loss of face? So now it is the question of, should we get into this, and who's lose more face, and for what? What are the consequences? Is what they look at very, very seriously. Because their promise is Taiwan will be integrated. If in between something happens, a skirmish happens, means slowly but steadily, they will lose face. So, as far as the air power per se, in its direct form, air power, I'm not saying assets of air power. Air power per se may not play an immediate role. Of course, we are beefing up everything. We are going into higher technologies here, there, where means 36 Rafales won't make the world of a difference, frankly, honestly speaking. It will make a difference. There's no doubt. There are weapon systems coming in with them also. But weapon systems to be used at higher altitudes has got a different thing. We learned, India was the first country to learn
different profile,
how to have weapon systems to be firing at altitudes high. And I still feel that there will be a lot of show of muscle. A lot of show of muscle, which is happening today.
Yes.
And Chinese having the money, and Tibet being the plateau that it is, they're being able to construct a whole pile of infrastructure. At one time, there were only, I think, 5 bases which were of any kind of threat to us.
Yes, sir.
Now there'll be more. There'll be more, and they will build up, and they will use technology here. They'll make them nuclear shelters, this thing, that thing, etc. But it is a nuclear button which exists there, exists with us, and exists in some of the rogue nations also. It will be a very dangerous game to play. A very dangerous game to play, to start something which you may not have any control beyond a certain point, and no one in the world knows what is that point. No Russia, no United States, no China, no one knows because in all our planning we never ever bring in the nuclear kahani. Do we require so many international ballistic missiles in the world when a few of them can annihilate?
Finished.
But why are we building them? It is just a deterrence of the highest order. Again, my thinking, my personal thinking. It's phenomenal deterrence. But at the end of the day, even Russia realizes that also United States realized that what the hell are we sitting with thousands of these things?
60,000.
Let's cut it down. And they both cut down. Russia has cut down. And so will China realize at a later date. They will also realize. We must have a minimum deterrence. That's it. But to compete just because they've got 100 or 2,000 silos made, they said, should we make 2,000 silos on our side? No. So this kind of thinking continues to take place at various levels. I don't know. Or maybe I'm the only idiot who thinks like this. But it's a fact.
No, absolutely, sir.
So that is what I'm saying. Air-wise, we'll continue to build up the potential and capability. But we cannot beat them in numbers. We have realized that, and we will not try and compete there. We shouldn't.
We shouldn't. Absolutely.
We must keep up the deterrence. We must have the deterrence. Anyhow, so that is my reading. As a deterrent, we must have it, whether we call it a MIRV series of ICBMs, the multiple re-entry vehicle systems actually, or we have higher capacity nuclear weapon. What is it? But I definitely am not a believer of bombers. Although there was a school of thoughts about 20 years back that why don't we go back for bombers? No, I think they're too massive a target to be ignored. Today, if I can shoot down a bloody satellite, what is shooting down a bomber here?
Absolutely, yes.
Mhm.
Why send
So
7 billion to do something that a rocket can send across?
yeah, why should I waste? And earlier the bombers used to send, let's say, the B-52 used to carry a bloody 100 bombs here. But now one bomb can do the same thing as 100 bombs can do. Anyhow, so that is my personal opinion about use of air power. And will it come to it in the near future? I don't know what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, sir. So, the Chinese keep touting about capabilities of their new platforms. I mean, as a matter of fact, the Pakistanis and Chinese keep harping about the JF-17, the J-10, and so on and so forth. We've seen reports of all kinds of issues with the JF-17s, as a matter of fact. The online space talks about, especially with the Dubai Air Show happening, everybody talked about JF-17 being a fourth generation aircraft, whereas its own website says it's a third generation aircraft. So there's a lot of, it didn't fly. There's a lot of ambiguity in this particular sense. There are concerns about underperforming engines, cracks on the windshields, and the biggest thing that I say is if JF-17 was that great an aircraft, why don't the Chinese fly it themselves? I mean, if it's that really, really good, what stops them? What is it that and you said there is no way one can know because they keep it very close to the chest. How does one project a capability of a force opposing it when this is the kind of a scenario that you're dealing with?
Look, first and foremost, there's a saying also, no, join the dots. When you join the dots, you'll find some kind of a blurred answer there. And in my opinion, I'm joining the dots. Like all Chinese goods that we in India, we are buying, our people are buying left, right, center. They have no reliability of quality. There's no reliability. It's a fact of life.
Sure.
Like India used to produce and sell a lot of stuff abroad. I remember including manhole covers made of steel or iron. To UK, we used to send about 30, 40 years back. And we Kalus are so great at cheating our mothers also. So we started cheating there also. Ultimately, we lost the contract.
Yes.
The Chinese have been selling a lot of this stuff everywhere, more so to the poorer nations in the world by saying, we'll give you loan, we'll give you money, we'll give this, buy. But the world is realizing that the reliability factor of Chinese stuff is not good.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, is not good. And like you said, Richard, that people are talking of the so-called engine problems. Like I discussed with you, engine is not an easy thing to make. My God, there are just 4 or 5 companies in the world who have mastered this art over decades.
Decades, yes, sir.
Do we have that kind of money for R&D, which we have spent on Kaveri? Of course, I could have bought maybe a few hundred engines from here, there. But we have to try. And Chinese are trying, but they have not yet succeeded. That's why I told you about the Putin note. Don't give them technology. Like, finally, he's realized. So, they've given them S-400s already. They had the S-300s earlier.
Yes, sir.
There'll be some part of this technology that the Russians won't give.
Probably not give them the entire package.
Sorry?
Probably not give them the entire package itself, sir.
No, they will give most of it because you've got to also prove it, not to sell. But the Russians are now convinced that these things can be used against us only.
Correct, sir.
Okay. So what if the northeastern side, what was the river? I forget. My knowledge is not that good. Where they had their
Yes,
conflict.
sir.
And they,
1969.
yeah, so now they have stopped all that because they have also understood the Chinese nibbling game. And there's a lot of unguarded territory of Russia in the eastern coast.
Yeah, they claim Vladivostok and the entire part of Siberia as well as their own territories.
The Russians want back Alaska.
Yes.
By so that is where I feel we are there now. Now what? Polo.
So, my final question to you is about the organization of the PLAF. I mean, the Chinese tout around the theaterization that they've been able to achieve to quite a large extent. The Western Theater Commander is something that we talk about very often when we talk about India-China relations. When we talk about theaterizations, we saw 50 issues that are coming up. I'm sure the same issues came up in China as well. But with an authoritarian regime, I'm sure they were able to kind of, push them out and down to the ground. Having said that, you can push them out, but the commanders on the ground still know what the realities are, and sometimes there is resistance. Do you think that they've been able to set up their targets, meet the targets that they've set up for themselves in terms of theaterization, in terms of, bridging the gap between the three forces that they had? And of course, how will they be able to live up to the expectations in times of battle with regards to these whole white papers that they've created on theaterization, looking at the shoddy equipment and the conscription that they've got going for themselves?
Look, let's start from the base. Let's start from a very base thing. The Communist Party controls the military. And who controls the Communist Party? Is the boss. Right? Who's got himself a third tenure and president for life, or whatever you call him. He wants to become God. He cannot become God because God has got other people to look after, other things to look after. You see, I am again using this word. The tentacles have been spread too wide. It's like an octopus. Once the tip of one of the tentacles gets cut, you won't even feel it, you won't even know it, but you will only realize when it is not functional.
True.
So they have got their tentacles in most parts of the world, and in some places their tentacles have been cut, especially in Africa. It's happening in Southeast Asia. It's happening in Central Asia.
Pakistan even.
It's happening. And they will not be able to realize that theater command, like we thought, theater command, aram se ban jayega. I was the first fellow who fought for it, saying that you cannot make theater commands at this moment, except maybe the Navy, the Maritime Command, because they are practically aloof.
Aloof, yes, sir.
And the Air Defense Command. The other Eastern, Western, Northern, and all this cock and bull that is being thought of, they have set up another committee anyhow, based on all our people telling that, listen, don't run before you know how to walk.
Walk, yes.
Plain simple. Firstly, at that point, and secondly, India does not have, more so the Air Force, does not have the full assets, and the Army also doesn't have the full assets required for that kind of a theater command thinking. And we do not even know, like we don't know how a nuclear war will end or start. We don't. No one in this damn world knows here. So Chinese, what is their background? Oh, they're a great class of warriors when they move 200, 300, 500, 2,000, 5,000 people on foot across all the territories that they had at one time, gone and either invaded or passed through or whatever it is. But when it comes to thinking of this level of a theater command, and the biggest command is in Tibet, as you are aware now, where they have changed 2 or 3 generals till now.
3 commanders, one has died, sir.
So it's not a simple game, neither for India nor for them. Their background of the soldiers are what? They're conscripts here for 2 years at this moment. Yeah, slowly at one time they'll say, okay, we'll make you permanent like we are making lady officers permanent. Okay, which is again one thing I was against. So I've been always in some controversy or the other. In my personal opinion, it's not a bloody easy kahani. It's okay to have a 14th Air Force or a 13th Air Force in the Pacific. It's okay to have so-and-so fleet in some part of the world. That's the American fleets, and the British have practically given up fleets. That even the French is, but the Americans are still sticking to it. The Russians believe in it to some extent. But as independently controlled smaller package, you can do it, but not at the theater command level to be able to understand your capability, the people, and the weaponry, intelligence to match and put all these four things together to go in for a conflict. I'm saying conflict, I'm not saying war.
War. Big difference.
It is, but if it is a smaller package, I have control. My brain can accept. Computers fed in by us will give you certain answers. But war games have never worked out. I'm telling you also, very frankly, computer war games have never worked out. Because there's the human element is missing. And the human element is what? It is made out of many, many things. And one of the most important things is emotion, fear. We are not robots. And if I were to believe H.G. Wells and his comic books of yesteryears, the robots are something which might dominate the humans. Then what happens? It's coming up slowly, but they are realizing that it is not an easy job. And I am not very much at this moment concerned about theater commands and the efficacy of these commands. But at the same time, we've got to carry on looking at it, how to fine tune, but keeping certain elements under positive human control. That is my reading. If it makes sense to you, it didn't make sense to me when I was talking to you.
No, sir, it does, because at the end of it, I mean, if you look at the strategic command of the United States when they made it, everybody said, when the rockets are there, get rid of the bombers. And by the end of it, they realized, okay, the bombers you can call back, but rockets once fired, you can't. So you need a human brain to actually take that last call. So it does make a lot of sense, because you can avert a very, very deadly incident by a human interface. And there have been multiple such incidents across the world. The man who saved the world in 1984 with
multiple instances in the whole world.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
The human factor was brought back into play.
Yes.
Because the human brain is something you and me will never be able to understand. And a human being itself understanding the human brain, impossible. And your feelings, like I said, emotions, fear, courage, all these things, these are emotional things. You cannot have it. You can have tears coming out of a robo's eye, but you can't get him to feel.
True, sir.
So that is what, I'm sorry, this unper man is giving you some
No, sir. This is actually very nice because you're trying to say fair enough. They've got automation, they've got technology, they've got the thing going for them. But at the end of it, the guy who's controlling it, what is his capabilities? How is he going to react to situations? When the first shot is fired over his head, what is he going to do? I mean, there's a big question mark
And
right there.
in the Chinese, uh, what do you call it, picture, the picture of China, the overall control, the independence is not given.
Absolutely.
They are being controlled centrally. And in control of a population of war-making capability of very little authority to them. Very little authority to them.
And there have been mistakes made in the same line multiple
Yeah,
times in history as well.
history will carry on repeating itself in different formats. Like I don't take any credit for it. But when I went through the files of Dollar Beg Oldie, said that let me read the files to see. I read only the notings as to why they said no, you can't do it, and this and that. Geological survey says this, all that crap. So at the end of the day, what did I do? I didn't put anything in writing. I told the two chiefs on the golf course, I'm doing it. They said, are you sure? I said, if I was not sure, I wouldn't be telling you. But since you're my senior, I'm telling you. And we did it. Okay. Because now you put it to a computer, the computer says the geological survey of so and so year said that there's a fissure of an earthquake, which is there in writing. So the computer would say, no, you can't do it. So all the people that I interacted with, except the youngsters, they said, so we can do it. The army said, we'll go all out to prepare whatever little we can prepare as an ALG and DPO. And quietly I went and landed there after 43 years and came back. But that also is caused one of the problems of what is happening because they want to cut across DBO and their journey will be shorter by 6 to 8 hours.
Yes, sir.
To reach the Karakoram highway. Anyhow, so that is that.
Fair enough, sir. I think this has been a very well-rounded discussion because you've taken us through the Chinese mind, as per se, with regards to its connection with the Air Force, how they've been able to kind of, build it around what they've perceived it to be, and how they've stolen, for the for the use of a better term.
They are masters.
Absolutely.
You bow down because they have got always a blackmailing event in their control. And they will get results out. But can this system work into the future? Will Hong Kong remain Hong Kong under the pressures of what is there today in Hong Kong? Will it? I don't know. I don't know, frankly. Whatever the Hong Kong population can say, whatever the Brits believed when they were handing over Hong Kong, the Chinese mind is a dubious mind. It's a very dubious mind. And their thinking is very, very far ahead. Very, very far ahead. Anyhow, that's it, fellow. You take care and look after yourself and carry on the good job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this conversation. And, I'm going to disturb you once again, not for a political subject like the landing on the Purvanchal Expressway, but a more deeper discussion like the one that we've had, sir. Till then, Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind, and you take care.